Racist deputy demands black woman to open trunk, but wasn't aware she was recording him. Sheila Parker's day had been long. She was tired, eager to go home, and ready to leave the stress of work behind her. The quiet hum of the engine and the empty road ahead were the only things keeping her company as she made her way through the dimly lit streets. The clock on her dashboard showed it was just past 11 p.m., and she was looking forward to nothing more than slipping into her comfortable bed. The night was peaceful, the kind where the silence wraps around you like a blanket. Sheila's thoughts drifted, her mind replaying the events of the day, but her monetary peace was abruptly shattered. Out of nowhere, the sharp wails of sirens filled the air. The bright blue and red lights flashed in her rear-view mirror. Her heart skipped a beat as she glanced back, seeing a police cruiser closing in behind her. Sheila's mind raced, trying to figure out why she was being pulled over. She wasn't speeding, and her car was in perfect working order. She took a deep breath and slowly pulled over to the side of the road, her hands gripping the steering wheel a little tighter than before. The sirens ceased, but the flashing lights continued to cast eerie shadows around her. As she sat there waiting for the officer to approach, a mix of anxiety and frustration bubbled up inside her. This wasn't the first time she'd been pulled over for no apparent reason. The uncomfortable thought that this might just be one of those nights crept into her mind, but she quickly pushed it aside, hoping for the best. Welcome back to PlotTwister. Before we unravel today's mystery, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you're always in the loop. From her side mirror, Sheila watched as the deputy exited his vehicle. He was a tall man, his silhouette imposing as he made his way toward her. The flashlight in his hand swung side to side, its beam piercing through the night. The light was harsh as it hit her face, forcing her to squint. She couldn't make out the deputy's face, but his voice was unmistakable. Deep, stern, and devoid of warmth. He asked for her license and registration in a tone that suggested this wasn't a request, but an order. Sheila complied, reaching for her documents with hands that she willed to stay steady. That night, which had begun so peacefully, had taken a turn she hadn't anticipated, and a sense of unease settled in the pit of her stomach. The deputy examined Sheila's documents with an intensity that felt unwarranted. His eyes narrowed as he flipped through her license and registration, his brow furrowed as if searching for something to justify his scrutiny. Sheila sat silently, watching him through the rearview mirror, her unease growing with every passing second. His questions came quickly, almost too quickly, as if he was trying to catch her off guard. Where are you coming from? Where are you headed? Why are you out so late? The tone was more accusatory than inquisitive, and Sheila felt her pulse quicken. She answered each question calmly, but her mind was racing. She couldn't understand why this simple traffic stop felt like more of an interrogation. Without warning, the deputy's demeanor shifted. He ordered Sheila to step out of the car and open the trunk. The request was abrupt, and it hit her like a slap. Sheila blinked in surprise, her mouth opening to ask why, but the words caught in her throat. The deputy's gaze was hard, his stance unyielding, and she realized that this wasn't a request she could easily refuse. Sheila's fingers trembled slightly as she unbuckled her seatbelt and pushed open the car door. The night air was cool against her skin, but it did nothing to soothe the nervous energy building inside her. She walked to the back of the car, feeling the deputy's eyes on her the entire time. The trunk release clicked under her touch, and the lid lifted slowly, revealing the contents inside. Sheila stepped back, giving the deputy space to inspect, but something about his behavior felt off. He wasn't really looking at the items in the trunk. Instead, he seemed more interested in the act of making her comply. His eyes darted around, almost as if he was searching for a reason to escalate the situation further. The tension between them was thick, an invisible line that Sheila feared might snap at any moment. The deputy's voice, louder now, demanded to know why she had hesitated earlier. Sheila, her nerves fraying, answered as best she could, trying to keep her voice steady, but inside the fear was growing. The realization that this encounter was becoming something much more than a routine traffic stop. Sheila could feel her heart pounding in her chest as she stood by the open trunk, trying to maintain her composure. The night air, once cool, now felt suffocating, pressing in on her from all sides. The deputy's presence was overwhelming, his gaze sharp and unyielding as if he could see right through her. Every movement he made felt like a threat, and Sheila's instincts screamed at her that something wasn't right. She hadn't expected this. What should have been a routine traffic stop was spiraling into something far more sinister. The way the deputy lingered, the way he asked his questions, with that undercurrent of suspicion, it all felt wrong. Sheila's fear grew with each passing moment, a gnawing anxiety that settled deep in her stomach. She knew she had done nothing wrong, but the intensity of the situation made her question everything. As the deputy circled her car, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, Sheila's thoughts raced. She tried to focus on staying calm, but it was becoming increasingly difficult. She could feel the weight of the situation bearing down on her, the uncertainty of what might happen next. Every word she spoke, every move she made, was calculated to avoid further escalation, but it was like walking on a tightrope. One wrong step, and everything could come crashing down. Then came the deputy's words, cutting through the silence like a knife. His voice was low, almost like a growl, as he muttered something about people like her. The insinuation was clear, and it hit Sheila like a punch to the gut. Her mind raced, trying to process the hostility behind those words. She felt exposed, vulnerable in a way she hadn't expected, and the fear inside her swelled, threatening to overtake her. Sheila stood there frozen, her thoughts a tangled mess of fear and disbelief. She knew she needed to stay strong, to keep her head clear, but the situation was slipping out of her control. The deputy's presence was overpowering, his intentions unclear, and Sheila couldn't shake the feeling that she was trapped in a situation that was rapidly spiraling out of her hands. The night, once a refuge, now felt like a prison. Sheila's fear was no longer just a nagging feeling. It was real, tangible, and growing with every passing second. She was caught in a web of uncertainty, unsure of what to do next, as the weight of the moment pressed down on her, making it hard to breathe. Just as the tension reached its peak, the low rumble of another engine broke through the silence. Sheila's heart skipped a beat as she saw another set of headlights approaching. For a moment, time seemed to slow. The new arrival, another police car, pulled up behind the first, its lights flashing in the night. Sheila's mind raced with questions. Was this going to make things worse, or could this be the break she needed? From the second cruiser, a young officer stepped out, Deputy Sarah Lopez. Her name badge gleamed under the flashing lights. Approached with a calm but alert demeanor. Unlike the first deputy, her expression was neutral. Her steps measured. She quickly took in the scene. The open trunk. Sheila's tense posture and the way Deputy Wilson seemed to loom over her. Deputy Lopez greeted Sheila with a nod, her tone even almost kind. The contrast between her and Wilson was stark. Sheila felt a small flicker of hope, though she didn't let herself relax just yet. Lopez asked a few straightforward questions, her eyes occasionally darting to Wilson, who now stood a few paces away, watching the interaction closely. The air was thick with unspoken tension. Wilson's eyes narrowed as Lopez continued her questioning, and it was clear he wasn't pleased with her interference. But Lopez wasn't deterred. She turned to Wilson, her voice firm as she asked why Sheila had been pulled over and what had prompted the trunk search. There was a pause, a heavy, uncomfortable silence, as Wilson hesitated, his authority seemingly challenged for the first time that night. Wilson's response was curt, defensive. He tried to justify his actions, but Lopez wasn't easily convinced. Sheila could see the gears turning in Lopez's mind, her suspicion growing as she pieced together the situation. The balance of power had subtly shifted, and Sheila could sense it. Lopez's presence was a buffer, a potential lifeline in this increasingly hostile encounter. Lopez turned back to Sheila, her voice quieter, more personal. She asked if everything was okay, her concern genuine. Sheila hesitated for a moment, then did something she hadn't planned. She mentioned the recording. The words hung in the air, and for a moment, everything seemed to stop. Wilson's face tightened. A flicker of something. Anger? Fear? Crossing his features. Lopez's eyes sharpened, understanding dawning as the situation took an unexpected turn. Deputy Lopez's eyes widened slightly as Sheila mentioned the recording. The atmosphere shifted instantly. The power that Deputy Wilson had wielded so freely moments before now felt fragile, like it could shatter with a single word. Lopez asked Sheila to show her the video, her voice steady but laced with urgency. Sheila, her hand still trembling, fumbled with her phone before finally pulling up the recording. The air was thick with anticipation as Lopez watched the video. The glow of the screen reflected on her face, her expression growing more serious with each passing second. Wilson stood off to the side, visibly uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot. His earlier confidence was drained away, replaced by a tense, almost fearful look. He knew what was coming. After what felt like an eternity, Lopez finished watching the video. She looked up at Sheila, her expression a mix of sympathy and determination. Then turning to Wilson, Her tone became authoritative, cutting through the night air like a knife. She asked him to step away from the vehicle, her words leaving no room for argument. Wilson, clearly aware of the implications, hesitated before complying, his movements stiff and reluctant. Lopez's focus shifted entirely to Sheila now. She reassured her that what was happening was not okay, and that she had every right to feel wronged. Her words were a lifeline, something solid for Sheila to hold on to after the whirlwind of fear and confusion. Lopez explained that she would be filing a report based on the video, ensuring that this encounter would not be swept under the rug. Wilson, now standing by his patrol car, tried to defend himself, his voice lacking the commanding presence it had before. He stammered through an explanation, but the damage was done. Lopez didn't waver, her stance firm as she informed him that an internal investigation would follow. The shift in power was complete. What had begun as an attempt to intimidate Sheila had backfired spectacularly. Sheila felt a wave of relief wash over her as Lopez handed her phone back. The nightmare was finally ending. She was free to leave, but not without the assurance that justice would be sought. As she drove away, the tension slowly unwinding from her body, she couldn't help but feel grateful that she had trusted her instincts to record the interaction. That decision had turned the tide, ensuring that the night ended not in fear, but in a small but significant victory. What are your thoughts on the twist we uncovered today? Comment your ideas below. Make sure to like and subscribe for a daily dose of drama and mystery. See you later with another twist.